All right, hello everyone. Now that you've built, hopefully, or you know how to build your stored procedures in your management studio or your database, now it's time to learn how to call these stored procedures from a program. Every program, like everything, is going to be a little bit different. Every programming language, I should say, is a little bit different how you execute this. But I'm going to show you how to do it in VB right now. And again, it's all based upon the different, types of database connectivities and objects that you're going to be using. We're using OLEDB. There's actually other ones for Visual Basic, and there's other ones you're going to be using in other programming languages. So you'll have to go learn that. Basically, just go Google if you're in Python or if you're in PHP how to execute a stored procedure from that language. You'll find it instantaneously. Okay. Well, basically, what I did is I brought up an older program here, one of the ones I showed you how to do for your CRUD application you just built. Okay, and here's where we have our select statements, right? And we're doing all of this, and then basically what we're doing is we executed our str select that string within our OLDB. All right, and we executed the reader, and everything worked beautifully. Okay. So the question is, what do we need to do now? We have this right here in a stored procedure. Well, let's go to look at another program here. I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised. It's not too darn hard. Instead of having that string built out, and now we have the stored procedure already finished in our database, we're just going to call it. We got to make sure we still open the database. We're going to open and do everything that we did before perfectly fine. I should say I want to make sure you understand that we're also in our display students. Okay, so in my particular situation here, if you go look at this programming code that I'll have for you, we're under the display students form. Okay, and that form looks like this right here, and where I just basically display the student. Okay, and we'll execute this here in a few seconds. And so all we need to do then is replace, whoops, gets up, sorry, replace this right here and that string with actually the name of the stored procedure that's in our database. Once again, make sure we open the database first so it finds it. Pretty simple, right? I mean, I can't get any easier. And so we actually took out the inline string and we replaced it with this. This does eliminate all of those, quotes and unquotes and concatenation and everything else. I'll bet you'll sit back and say, God, I love this. And you should. Stored procedures are fairly simple and they're very easy. And I recommend you using them. Matter of fact, you're going to play around with them this week. And if you want, you can replace everything, but I just want you to replace a few right now. Okay? So with that said, this is how we do it. How does this work? Well, let's go check it out real fast. And I got my little piece here. I want to do display students. And there you go. So we now have, there's James Jones, Lon Kim, Bob Nields, and Roseanne Nields, and good old Will Smith. Okay? Anyway, and all in there. Everybody see that? Everybody looks good. Cool, cool, cool. And that's how you execute a stored procedure in your code. I could end this video right now, but that would be boring, right? We might as well go a little bit deeper. All right, Bob, that was a simple stored procedure. How about one of those ones with parameters? I bet you're all saying that out there right now. Well, let's get into this. I actually happen to have one sitting here for us. And Control X, and I'm going to bring it up here. One thing I probably should state, I think I did forget to state, is we got to tell it a couple things. Retrieve all the records. Note that you the name of the stored procedure in your database is in quotes. Notice that right there. See that? Okay. Note that you have to state that the command type is a stored procedure. You need to tell it, in this case, that it is a stored procedure. I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't have that in there at one point in time, and it worked fine. But per the instructions of OLEDB, it should be there. I will tell you, it will not work if you have parameters. You must have that command type in there, or it will not work there. So I just suggest that you just always, if you're executing a stored procedure, to actually have this line right here also, telling it that the command type is a stored procedure. I think if it doesn't have parameters, it works either way. If it does have parameters, you must have it. You're going to get an error. Okay, let's go ahead and comment out this. And there you go. And we're going to uncomment this right here. And here we go here. Okay, Now what we're going to do is I'm going to do that one, that student list by state, and it actually had one parameter, which was the state ID. You must make sure, okay, when you, so you, in this case here, the name of the stored procedure, and of course it must be exactly named the exact same thing as you named it over in your database. If it's not, it's not going to find it. It has to be able, if I sat back and try to execute this and I put an S there, it's going to say I can't find list by states. You never created that. It has to be the exact name of the stored procedures you created in your database. I hope that goes without saying, but you never know, okay? The same thing for your parameters. If you have a parameter in your stored procedure, it must be identical. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a parameter. Notice this right here. So what we're going to do prior to executing, I'm going to bring this down here, and that's fine. I'm going to bring that right here, sorry. Let's see, go right there. So prior to executing, you're going to say, I got the stored procedure, and there's a parameter. If you have a parameter in your stored procedure and you do not populate it here, or you do not add this little section of code right here, it will give you an error. It's saying it's going to look for a parameter. If you spell it wrong here, or you name it differently here than you did in your actual database, the stored procedure, it will say it doesn't exist. And so it must be identical to that. So going back to, let's see, USP students list by state. Let's see, do I have that over here? Here we go, right here, state ID. So I'm looking at this right here has to be identical to what I actually have in my code right there. Here we go, right here. Does that make sense? Okay. If you sit back and just put state in there and you forget the ID piece, you're going to get an error. It has to be one-to-one. All right. The data type has to be one-to-one. So in this case here, if I go back and look at this, this is an integer, and I need to tell it over here that I'm going to be passing an integer also. Get it? And you just say OLEDB dot OLEDB type dot whatever it is, integer, decimal, whatever you're doing. Does that make sense? This direction piece here, parameter direction is input, so it's basically saying I'm inputting this to it, so all of this is really cut and paste. You don't really have to go too crazy and try to understand it. And then this is the value. This is the actual value that you're passing. I am hard coding a 1 in there. This doesn't have to be a hard-coded piece. You could put a variable there, so maybe if you go have a combo box and you go get something off of it and you take that value from the combo box, move it to a variable could be there. So we could sit back and very easily have int state ID, something like that here, if I had populated a combo box and did it that way. Does that make sense? Of course, I wouldn't have the 1 there. I would just have it like this. All right? In this case here, I'm just going to put 1 hard coding it because I don't really have a combo box and working on all that, and I'm showing you that. That makes sense? So this could be hard coded and it could be a variable. Hopefully that makes sense to you. Okay, cool. So I execute this now and I sit back and I say, okay, that all looks good. And let's go ahead and execute this. I don't know why my thing does that, but it does. And now we're doing everybody from Ohio. So you may recognize that I think it looks like Long Kim may not be in that list anymore. So we actually filtered him out of there. What do you think? Kind of cool? All right. And so now we passed the parameter. My list changed a little bit because we actually filtered my list. All right. What's the next question you're going to ask? Come on, somebody. Wonder if you have more than one parameter. What do I do? Great question. Good job. Well, if you remember, I created one with state. Oops, I got my code running still. I got one here with state. And so we'll put the race right there, a state and race. And I need to add another parameter. Not too hard. Take this code right here, copy it down. I'm going to have my race ID here. I promise you that's what I called it. And my value here, I'll keep 1-to-1. I think that's how I tested it. And there you go. So based upon how many parameters you can have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 20,000. I don't care. You got to add these things all the way through. And this comes before your execute reader. So everybody see that? Pretty simple. Let's watch how this works. And display students, and I think it's C. Now we have all African Americans that are actually in here. There you go. There you go. Isn't that beautiful? So I don't know who we eliminated, but we eliminated somebody based upon that filtering on this case. Okay? All good? That's how this works. Once again, I can't stress enough, you're not going to hard code these values ever in your program. You're always going to have something that you're going to pull from a drop down list or a combo box or something. And again, when you do that, you'll put that there, okay, versus hard coding. I hope that makes sense to you, right? You can either put like the CBO.text in there or whatever that brings back the value, or you can bring, or if you move it to a variable, put the variable in there. You should know how to do that by now, right? Okay, and then we loop through it and everything else is the same. And so hopefully this, putting it all together here, makes a lot of sense to you and what we've eliminated and so on. Again, we eliminated the need to build this big old concatenated string. We actually created it once and we're done. Yeah, I know we cut it and pasted, but once you put it in there, you're good to go and go from there. You got to have a stored procedure for each type, or wait, I want to say each call, meaning if you're calling students from to multiple pages and it's the exact same SQL statement, you can all you got to do is create one and you're done. But if you're different for every different type of select statement, you got to have a stored procedure for that. Okay, a unique stored procedure. All right. As I stated in the video before, I want you guys to try this out, test a couple of them, play around, see how you can do on them, make them work, and let me know if you have any questions. You're really just dealing right now with select statements. In our next set for next week, we'll get into inserts and deletes and updates. They're fairly simple, but there is a piece to that we want to talk about, and it's called Transact SQL. So we want to talk about that a little bit, and so we'll do that next week. All right, good luck.